Welcome to the AXA Engineers Podcast, Episode 10. Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into a truly critical topic for the future of civil engineering. We're talking about the hidden risks and, maybe more importantly, the incredible opportunities within global engineering partnerships, specifically civil engineering outsourcing. For anyone navigating complex projects in this field, understanding the nuances of how these partnerships function and sometimes, don't function is absolutely key. And that's precisely what we'll be unpacking today. We've got some fascinating insights to share, particularly looking at operational models like those used by leading firms such as AXA Engineers. They're genuinely shifting the paradigm, changing how successful external collaboration actually works. As we explore these insights, we definitely invite you to follow along, share your thoughts, what stands out to you in this discussion. Let us know in the comments. We really do love hearing from you. Okay, so let's dive right in. When we talk about engaging external teams for civil engineering projects, what do you think? What immediately comes to mind as the, let's say, most dangerous point of failure? I suspect most people might instinctively jump to a technical flaw, right?
Like a calculation error.
Exactly. Maybe a miscalculation in some complex structural analysis, or perhaps an oversight in a CAD drawing, something concrete. But what if I told you the real Achilles heel, the most insidious threat to your project's success, isn't a technical error at all?
Okay, intriguing.
It's something far more subtle. It seems innocuous, almost harmless on the surface, yet incredibly destructive. It's the silent, often invisible gap between your in-house teams and your external partners.
It's a fascinating paradox, isn't it?
Yeah.
That something seemingly so intangible, something that on the surface appears minor can actually balloon into the most critical vulnerability for a multi-million-dollar infrastructure project.
Eh.
This gap we're talking about, it isn't really about a lack of design skill or engineering expertise. Not fundamentally.
So it's not about competence.
Not usually, no. Instead, it's a void in communication. It's a lapse in that seamless interaction need. Imagine just a straightforward question that needs an immediate answer. A critical design detail, maybe.
Like what? Give me an example.
Okay. Perhaps the precise grade of rebar needed for a specific concrete pour. Or maybe the geotechnical data for a high-rise foundation design, something really fundamental. In this silent communication gap, that seemingly simple query, it doesn't just get delayed. It can, and often does, tragically escalate into a costly assumption.
An assumption. In civil engineering, that sounds dangerous.
It is. Potentially introducing catastrophic errors into your civil engineering project. And these errors, they can begin to spread, to propagate through the design process. Well, even before a project manager has finished their morning coffee, it happens simply because there's no continuous flow of information. There's no immediate feedback loop in place.
Right.
It's that moment when maybe no one is actively working on or overseeing that specific component. And that lack of continuity, that break in the communication chain, that's exactly where the initial stress fractures in a project's foundation begin to form.
Okay, so if I'm getting this right, what you're really saying is, in this demanding world of complex civil engineering projects, real-time communication isn't just like a nice-to-have feature, a desirable bonus for your external partnership.
Oh, absolutely not.
It's much more fundamental than that.
It's completely fundamental.
Yeah.
In the realm of external civil engineering services, real-time communication isn't a luxury. It's the absolute bedrock. It's what safeguards the project's integrity. Think about the ripple effect. A seemingly minor misunderstanding, maybe during a video conference. A critical dimension gets garbled. Or maybe a drainage slope for a highway project is misinterpreted.
Or an email just sits there.
Exactly. An urgent email about a material specification, it just goes unanswered for hours, maybe even days because of time zones or just, lack of process. These aren't just small operational inconveniences you can smooth over later.
No.
Each of these moments represents, like I said, an initial stress fracture in the project's foundation. These seemingly minor communication gaps, they are the starting point for systemic failures. Failures that can cascade through a project, ultimately compromising the entire civil engineering endeavor.
Wow.
Yeah, the cumulative effect of these small, unaddressed ambiguities, especially when you're dealing with complex structural or infrastructure designs. It can lead to a fundamental misalignment between what the primary design team intended and what the outsourced partner actually executes.
That's a powerful image, and honestly, quite unsettling, that initial stress fracture. It really brings home the deep understanding that that leading firms like AXA engineers clearly have. They haven't just identified a general problem with communication in these partnerships, have they? It sounds like they've pinpointed something more specific. A structural gap, maybe?
Precisely. A structural gap in communication. It's about how the entire operational model of civil engineering outsourcing, if it's not meticulously designed, can inadvertently create these chasms rather than bridging them. Indeed. And to really get our heads around this, we need to go beyond just, acknowledging the problem exists. We need to look at the three primary causes that organizations like AXA engineers have identified, the deep roots of these pervasive communication breakdowns that you often see in civil engineering outsourcing.
Okay.
And crucially, we need to understand how they've actually engineered robust, sometimes counterintuitive solutions for each one.
All right, let's unpack this then. Cause number one. And this one feels maybe the most immediately obvious when you think about global collaborations in civil engineering. The significant time zone difference. I mean, it's just a fact of life when you're working across continents, right?
Yeah.
Geography.
It is a reality, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's one that's fraught with inherent and often profoundly overlooked consequences. This time zone disparity, it directly introduces these debilitating delays right into the critical decision-making processes. Just picture this scenario. Your U.S.-based project manager, they send a crucial query at the close of their business day, say 5 p.m. their time.
Okay, what kind of query?
Maybe it's a clarification needed on a very specific soil-bearing capacity value, something essential for a multi-story building's foundation design. Or maybe it's an urgent interpretation of a local seismic code that impacts the entire structural framework. Really critical stuff.
Right.
That email or that message, it might not even be seen by an overseas team for another 8 to 12 hours, depending on where they are.
So half a day, maybe more.
Exactly. And during that entire period, all progress on that specific critical design element, it's completely halted. Your overseas team is literally stuck, waiting for an answer to move forward, while your U.S. team is offline, asleep, unreachable.
And so the project just sits there. You're forced into this holding pattern, basically waiting until the next working session, which could easily be the next calendar day, just to get a response. So what should be a quick, direct question turns into this protracted, really time-consuming delay. It seems like maybe a minor thing in isolation, but I can see it now. Imagine that ripple effect. This same scenario playing out multiple times a day, maybe across different project components, each one waiting for a green light. Those small incremental delays, they don't just add up, do they? They multiply. They become these significant roadblocks that can completely derail an entire project timeline.
Precisely. And this right here is where the approach taken by a firm like AXA Engineers truly stands out. It's innovative because it moves beyond just sort of acknowledging the problem exists. They don't just manage the time zone difference, they actively counteract it. Their solution is this sophisticated dual team working model. Now, this isn't just about having two separate teams. That's not the clever part. It's specifically engineered, the whole structure, to create a significant overlap, several hours, directly with U.S. working hours.
Okay, so how does that work in practice? Two teams, different places.
Exactly. It involves having two distinct teams, often in different global locations, but strategically staggering their shifts. So for several critical hours each day, both teams are simultaneously active and online. This allows for real-time handoffs of work, immediate clarification of any questions that pop up, and essentially continuous progress.
That's fascinating. So instead of that almost inevitable overnight delay, you're describing a model that actually ensures real-time communication. So a question sent at, say, 4 p.m. U.S. time gets answered immediately because an AXA engineers team is actively working and ready to respond.
That's the goal, yes. Immediate or near-immediate response during that overlap.
That essentially transforms what is typically, a standard 12-hour lag in civil engineering outsourcing into a seamless, continuous workflow. So it's not just about reducing delays, it's about actually eliminating that dead downtime entirely. That sounds like an incredible operational advantage, especially for complex civil engineering projects.
Absolutely. And the benefits, they actually extend even further than just preventing delays. It's more proactive than that.
Yeah.
AXA Engineers operates on what they call a 24-hour project advancement model. Think about it. While the U.S.-based teams are wrapping up their day, an AXA Engineers second shift team seamlessly picks up the baton, picks up the work.
So the work never stops.
Effectively, yes. It means that by the start of the next U.S. workday, a significant portion of the deliverables isn't just in progress. It's often already completed and handed back, ready for review. This strategy doesn't just eliminate downtime or prevent those frustrating project halts. It actively accelerates project delivery pushing it far beyond what traditional kind of fragmented external engineering models can achieve. Your civil engineering project is always moving forward, constantly progressing without those costly pauses. This continuous workflow where, the sun literally never sets on your project allows for a pace and efficiency that really sets a new standard in the industry.
That is an incredible operational advantage. It really does sound like compressing project timelines significantly. But time zones, okay, while they're a big hurdle, they aren't the only challenge, are they?
Not at all.
The second cause you mentioned, this feels much more nuanced. Subtle, you said, but profound cultural differences. This isn't something you can just fix with a different shift schedule, is it? This goes much deeper into human interaction, how people communicate.
You're absolutely right. This cause delves right into the subtleties of human interaction. It goes far beyond simple language barriers, like translation issues. It's really about how ingrained communication styles, the way people prefer to give and receive information, can lead to profound misinterpretations of technical specifications. Even when everyone involved is ostensibly speaking the same language, say, English.
Can you give an example of that?
Sure. For instance, in some cultures, particularly maybe in North America or parts of Europe, direct and explicit communication is highly valued. It's expected, especially in a technical or engineering context. Instructions are often given with very precise parameters. Do X, Y, and Z by this exact time using these specific load values. Very clear, very direct.
Yeah.
However, in other cultures, communication might be more indirect. It might place a higher value on things like harmony, politeness, or maybe avoiding direct confrontation, or appearing too demanding. So an instruction that seems perfectly clear and unambiguous to one team, like ensure the foundation depth accounts for soil variability, that might be subtly misconstrued by another team.
How so?
It might be taken as an implied suggestion, perhaps, or maybe a general guideline to keep in mind, rather than a hard, critical instruction that requires specific, documented action and verification.
Yeah.
And that ambiguity around critical instructions, well, it can have catastrophic implications for a civil engineering project.
Right. So it's not just about translating the words correctly from one language to another. It's about interpreting the underlying intent, the unspoken context, and all those implicit meanings and expectations that are just built into different cultural interactions. This could lead to massive problems if a critical instruction about, say, a specific seismic bracing requirement, or maybe the precise installation sequence for a bridge component, gets subtly misinterpreted, just slightly off.
Exactly. A misunderstanding of even a single word's emphasis, or maybe the perceived level of urgency in an instruction, can fundamentally alter how a design specification is interpreted and ultimately implemented. And the consequences in civil engineering, as we know, can be severe. It can lead to rework, significant delays, or even tragically, safety compromises.
So how do you tackle that? It seems much harder than time zones.
It is harder. And leading firms like AXA engineers, they address this with a truly comprehensive mitigation strategy. It goes way beyond those simple, maybe online, cultural sensitivity training modules that many firms might offer as a sort of checkbox exercise.
Okay.
They employ deep on-site training and genuine cross-cultural immersion.
On-site training and immersion, that sounds unique and pretty intensive. What does that actually mean in practice for their external engineering services? How does that work?
It means they actually embed their engineers directly within the client's facilities for extended periods.
You mean AXI engineers go and sit in the client's office?
Yes. Imagine an AXA engineers expert spending weeks, sometimes even months, at your office, working side by side with your own in-house teams. Through this direct first-hand experience, they get an intimate, almost intuitive knowledge of your specific client workflows, your company's internal design standards, your quality control processes, and crucially, your unique communication culture.
So they see how things really get done day to day.
Precisely. They observe how your project managers interact during, say, daily stand-ups, how your engineers discuss technical challenges, maybe in informal settings, over coffee, how feedback is given and received, even the unwritten rules of communication within your organization.
So they're not just getting a theoretical understanding from some manual or presentation. They're actually experiencing your company's rhythm and operational nuances in a practical day-to-day sense. Like they become a true extension of your team for that period.
Exactly like that.
Yeah.
And this deep practical training and understanding, it isn't just left to chance or individual memory. It's then meticulously documented, and it's systematically transferred back to their offshore teams through structured workshops, internal knowledge-sharing platforms, and continuous mentorship programs. This whole process creates a consistent and unified understanding of project expectations, technical language, and critical design methodologies across the entire partnership, regardless of where each team member is physically located. The goal is simple. Ensure that when a design specification is communicated, it's understood and interpreted in exactly the same way by everyone involved. It's about eliminating those subtle but potentially devastating cultural misinterpretations.
And the outcome of this intensive approach, it seems clear, is minimizing the risk of those subtle misinterpretations, making sure that design specifications are fully validated before they get incorporated into subsequent design iterations. That sounds absolutely crucial for successful external civil engineering projects. You simply can't afford to have some foundational misunderstanding propagate through an entire design, or worse, the construction phase.
It's a key differentiator, absolutely. This approach prevents those, what you might call ghost errors, those silent, non-obvious misunderstandings that might not be immediately apparent, but can subtly undermine the structural integrity of the design, or maybe lead to significant issues much later in construction. It's all about proactive prevention, not just reactive correction after the fact.
Which brings us nicely to the third major cause you mentioned for communication breakdown, the absence of a unified, standardized communication protocol. Oh, I think I've seen this firsthand in some projects. Just chaos. Critical documentation fragmented across a whole myriad of different platforms, leading to pure confusion.
It truly is chaos.
Yeah.
And it's a silent killer of efficiency and reliability, especially in complex civil engineering endeavors.
Yeah.
When project documentation, design files, critical correspondence, when it's all fragmented across these disparate systems, emails flying everywhere, messages on Slack or Teams, files stored in different versions on SharePoint or Dropbox or local drives, the result is an immediate and critical problem. Rampant version control issues. Total nightmare. You end up with multiple versions of the same drawing, or the same specification, or the same report floating around. And often, no one is entirely sure which one is the latest, approved, definitive, single source of truth. This means engineers can inadvertently be working off outdated specifications, or conflicting design notes, or even superseded regulatory guidance. And that inevitably leads to rework, costly errors, and delays.
That sounds like a project manager's worst nightmare, honestly, and incredibly risky for design teams.
Yeah.
Can you give us a tangible, maybe a real-world example of how this actually plays out in civil engineering project delivery?
Certainly. Imagine a detail that seems minor on the surface. Let's say a delayed query about the precise location of an existing underground utility conduit found during a site survey for a new municipal building.
Okay, seems small enough.
Seems small, but if that critical piece of information isn't immediately available and easily accessible, maybe because the query gets lost in a long email chain or it's buried in an unmonitored chat channel, it can halt an entire section of the design work for a full business day, maybe even longer.
Just waiting for that one detail.
Just waiting. Your design teams are then forced into this impossible choice. They can either pause their work entirely, which directly impacts project timelines, pushes back delivery dates, incurs standby costs, or, far more dangerously, they can proceed with an assumption about the utility's location. Just guess, essentially, to keep things moving. And that introduces significant, often unquantifiable, risk into the project. Neither option is good in civil engineering, where precision is absolutely paramount and assumptions can lead to structural failures, costly damage to existing infrastructure, or severe safety hazards down the line.
So they're caught between a rock and a hard place, forced to either incur potentially massive delays or take on unacceptable risk. And that's precisely where leading firms like AXA Engineers step in with a streamlined and thoroughly integrated solution, I presume.
Exactly. AXA Engineers fundamentally solves this problem by implementing a comprehensive, centralized project management system. Now, this system isn't just some software they bought off the shelves and bolted on. It's deeply integrated into their entire operational workflow. It forms the very backbone of how they collaborate internally and with clients. What this means in practice is that all design files, every single revision, all project correspondence approvals, quality checks, everything is maintained within a single, unified, usually cloud-based platform.
That just makes so much sense. One single accessible place for everything, presumably with clear audit trails and tracking.
Absolutely. Clear audit trails are key. This ensures strict version control, which, as we've discussed, is paramount in complex civil engineering projects. It completely eliminates the risk of conflicting document updates, where different teams might be working on different versions of the same drawing or specification, totally unaware of crucial changes made by others. AXA Engineers' integrated real-time workflow completely removes that dilemma we just talked about, that choice between delay and assumption.
Any query, any clarification needed, any design update, it's instantly accessible and communicated within that central system. This prevents teams from working based on guesswork or outdated information, drastically reducing the likelihood of cascading errors and the constant rework that often plagues fragmented projects. This unified approach provides really unprecedented clarity, consistency, and traceability, which are just foundational for success in any complex civil engineering endeavor.
Okay, we've talked a lot about the individual causes of these communication gaps in external engineering partnerships, the time zones, the culture, the lack of protocol. But what are the broader, maybe the far-reaching consequences when these issues aren't addressed systematically? It feels like it goes way beyond just a few delayed emails or a missed deadline here and there.
Oh, it absolutely does. This fundamental misalignment that we unfortunately see so often in typical external civil engineering partnerships, it creates this cascading effect of negative impacts. It extends far beyond simple delays or isolated errors. Firstly, and perhaps most obviously, it directly and measurably erodes efficiency. It impacts project timelines and budgets in really significant ways.
How so?
Well, when your internal teams and your external partners are consistently waiting for clarification, or they're spending valuable engineering hours correcting errors that stem purely from miscommunication, both time and money are literally being wasted, drained. This drains project resources and diverts precious attention away from productive, value-adding work.
And it's not just about the numbers, the time, and the budget, is it? You mentioned earlier a more insidious effect, the degradation of trust and collaboration between the client and the external provider. That feels like something much harder to quantify, but also much harder to rebuild once it's broken. It could potentially jeopardize not just the current project, but future collaborations too.
It's extremely difficult, sometimes bordering on impossible, to fully rebuild that trust once it's significantly damaged. Think of it as a kind of vicious cycle. When deadlines are consistently missed, or when accumulated errors require significant rework and costly corrections, clients inevitably, and quite rightly, begin to question their outsourced partner's competence, their reliability, maybe even their basic commitment to the project's success.
It's just a natural reaction, right?
Yeah. It's a natural human reaction to consistent friction and perceived underperformance. And often, the external team may be feeling unfairly blamed or perhaps misunderstood due to those cultural nuances we discussed, might respond defensively, which of course only serves to further strain the relationship. That degradation of trust then makes future collaboration even more difficult. It might lead to more miscommunication, perhaps a reluctance to share sensitive information openly, and the cycle just continues downwards. It can become a deeply adversarial relationship rather than the true partnership that was intended, which fundamentally defeats the entire purpose of engaging external civil engineering expertise in the first place.
So how do firms like AXA engineers actively counter this particularly damaging outcome of eroding trust? How do they proactively build and maintain that essential trust, especially when collaborating across significant distances and potentially different operational cultures in civil engineering outsourcing?
They do it by establishing right from the outset and then meticulously maintaining proactive communication channels and unwavering transparency at every single stage of the project. This isn't just about reacting well when problems eventually arise. It's about systematically preventing the very issues that tend to erode trust in the first place.
Okay, what does that look like in practice?
Well, it includes key practices like mandatory daily check-ins, brief, focused meetings where project leads from both the client side and the AXA engineers team connect. They review progress, they clarify any immediate ambiguities, they align on the next steps for the day. It also includes immediate design clarifications as soon as a question arises, facilitated by their overlapping shifts model, and comprehensive real-time progress tracking systems that are fully accessible to the client 24/7.
So clients are basically never left in the dark, guessing about project status or potential issues. They essentially have a clear, continuously updated window right into the work being done. That must foster immense confidence in a firm like AXA engineers and their services. I can see how that would be vital, especially in civil engineering outsourcing, where clients might naturally feel a certain lack of immediate control or visibility over teams that are geographically distant.
Precisely. That consistent visibility, coupled with their proven accessibility and responsiveness, builds tremendous confidence. It profoundly reinforces the partnership aspect. It also significantly reduces operational instability. You can see gaps in daily operations, often caused by those communication issues, inevitably lead to workload instability. Teams get forced into these frustrating cycles of hurry up and wait,
Right.
waiting for clarifications, unable to maintain a consistent productive pace. Revisions that logically should take maybe a few hours can instead stretch into days, just bleeding valuable time and budget, and impacting not just the specific task, but the entire downstream workflow.
And then there's the absolutely critical safety aspect in civil engineering that's always lurking in the background. When you have unmanaged time zone differences and fragmented communication protocols, it really seems like you could inadvertently create dangerous, potentially even life-threatening gaps in engineering oversight. My mind immediately goes to, the structural integrity of buildings, bridges, infrastructure people use every day.
It's a terrifying thought, isn't it? But it's a very real and completely unacceptable risk in our field. Consider this grim but plausible scenario. A 12-hour delay in confirming a critical load-bearing calculation, maybe for a primary structural member in a new high-rise building. This is some minor detail. It's absolutely fundamental to the building stability and ultimately public safety.
Of course.
If that clarification isn't immediate, if it's delayed by half a day due to time zones, an entire section of that building's design could potentially be completed based on an incorrect assumption, simply because the team couldn't afford to wait or felt pressured to keep moving.
And when that correction finally arrives, often much later, it frequently means a complete redesign of all the dependent components, potentially costing millions of dollars and delaying the project by weeks or months. That's not just a huge budget hit. As you say, it introduces unacceptable structural risks. It compromises the safety of future occupants and the public who interact with that structure.
Exactly. The consequences of such an error propagating silently through the design can be catastrophic, both financially and, most importantly, in terms of human life and public safety. And this is precisely where AXA engineers' commitment to real-time responsiveness provides an essential, almost life-saving layer of protection. Their integrated systems, their overlapping operational models, they ensure that no such critical calculation, no essential foundation specification, no critical rebar spacing detail, no bridge cable tensioning parameter proceeds without immediate verified confirmation during the crucial overlap period.
So that risk is actively managed out. It's actively managed out. This rigorous approach protects both the structural integrity of the project and, most importantly, the safety of the people who will eventually use the infrastructure. It truly sets them apart as a partner in the realm of civil engineering outsourcing. It transforms a common, dangerous risk into a cornerstone of their reliability.
Okay, so we've thoroughly explored the silent threats, the underlying causes, time zones, culture, protocols, and the really quite far-reaching consequences of communication gaps in civil engineering outsourcing. It seems abundantly clear these aren't minor, easily solvable issues. They're systemic, often deeply embedded challenges in traditional models. But the challenge itself, these communication gaps in complex global engineering partnerships, it's not insurmountable, is it? You're saying that solving it requires more than just, incremental fixes, like adding a few more meetings to the calendar or buying a new chat tool. Absolutely. That's exactly right. Patching over these deep-seated issues with more frequent emails or longer video calls that maybe aren't structured effectively, or throwing more scattered communication tools at the problem, it simply won't cut it. It's a Band-Aid solution at best, and often just adds to the noise.
Right.
What's truly required is a fundamental structural shift in how these partnerships are conceptualized, how they're built from the ground up, and how they're managed day to day. You can't just tinker around the edges. You have to redesign the entire operational framework specifically to prevent these vulnerabilities from arising in the first place. And this, I believe, is precisely where a firm like AK's engineers truly stands out. They're not just managing the process, they're acting as visionary leaders in providing external civil engineering services by addressing the structure itself.
And it really sounds like AXA Engineers is demonstrating precisely what that structural shift looks like in practice. They're not just reacting to problems as they pop up. They've proactively designed their entire operation, their whole way of working, specifically around mitigating these known vulnerabilities, integrating the solutions right into their core business model.
That's the absolute core of their distinctive value proposition. If we just sort of summarize their integrated system again, you've got their revolutionary dual-shift model, which is meticulously aligned directly with U.S. time zones to ensure that continuous workflow we talked about. Then there are their comprehensive cross-cultural training programs, which include that invaluable on-site knowledge transfer where their engineers literally immerse themselves in client operations to understand the nuances. And underpinning it all are their robust, centralized project management systems that enforce strict version control and provide that critical single source of truth for everyone.
Taken together, AXA engineers systematically eliminates the critical risks, the communication gaps, the delays, the misunderstandings that plague most traditional outsourcing partnerships. They've effectively taken what are often considered inherent liabilities, unavoidable downsides, of global civil engineering outsourcing, and they've ingeniously transformed them into strategic assets.
That's a really powerful statement. What is typically seen as a time zone liability for global engineering collaborations becomes, in AXA engineers' hands, a distinct competitive advantage. It really does sound like a paradigm shift for anyone seriously considering comprehensive civil engineering outsourcing.
It is indeed. It's a fundamental shift. This integrated, truly forward-thinking approach enables them to deliver engineering support that is not only rapid and accurate, but also consistently dependable over the long term. This isn't just about getting the job done somehow. It's about doing it faster, often with demonstrably higher quality due to fewer errors and less rework, and with far greater reliability than traditional, more fragmented models could ever realistically hope to achieve.
So the benefits are tangible.
Very tangible. This approach doesn't just accelerate project timelines for their clients, which can drastically reduce time to market for critical infrastructure, but it also significantly enhances that crucial trust factor, which is, as we've discussed, an often undervalued yet absolutely essential element for anyone engaging external civil engineering expertise. They've essentially built an operational model that actively ensures seamless, real-time collaboration, creating a level of partnership, of integration that is truly unique and I think sets a new industry benchmark.
So as we begin to wrap up this deep dive, it feels like we've uncovered a really profound insight here. The greatest risk in engaging external civil engineering partners isn't necessarily technical incompetence, although, of course, that's something you absolutely have to guard against with proper due diligence. No, the bigger, perhaps more insidious risk is the silent, often overlooked failure of communication. It's that unasked question that leads to an assumption. It's the subtly misinterpreted instruction due to cultural style. It's the fragmented data point that gets lost somewhere in disparate systems.
Hmm. To put it another way, you could say the integrity of any civil engineering project is as fundamentally dependent on the clarity, the consistency, and the continuity of its communication as it is on the strength and durability of its actual structural materials. Without clear, uninterrupted, unambiguous communication, even the best materials, the most brilliant designs, and the most precise calculations can ultimately lead to failure. Communication is the mortar holding it all together.
Therefore, thinking about our listeners, when you're evaluating a potential civil engineering outsourcing partner, does your critical inquiry, your due diligence, truly extend beyond just looking at their impressive technical portfolios, beyond their appealing cost structures? Do you rigorously assess their communication framework, their operational models specifically designed to overcome these global challenges, time zones, culture protocols? Do you probe their comprehensive risk mitigation strategies, especially those tailored to overcome the very specific challenges we spent this time discussing today?
It's a critical point. Informed decision-making in this space absolutely necessitates prioritizing partners who have adopted these kinds of meticulously engineered operational models. Models designed specifically to safeguard project success against these common pitfalls. Partnering with a firm like AXA Engineers brings that assurance. The assurance of a structurally engineered operation, including key elements like their dual-shift model aligned with U.S. working hours and their comprehensive cross-cultural training. This ensures the kind of seamless, real-time collaboration that truly sets them apart and fundamentally protects your project investment and timeline. To learn how AXA engineers can genuinely transform the success trajectory of your next civil engineering project, I'd strongly suggest you reach out to them today. Find out more. Because honestly, the future of your civil engineering endeavors might just depend on making that informed choice.
We really hope this deep dive has given you some invaluable insights into the complex but crucial world of civil engineering outsourcing, and maybe highlighted some of the innovative solutions being pioneered by leading firms like AXA Engineers. Don't forget to follow our show for more explorations into critical topics like this one, and please do share your comments on what you've learned today, or perhaps your own experiences. We truly love hearing from you.